how does that differ from a commercial gallery? And what's the representation of women artists like in those two spaces?
So, because still today, women are sorely lacking representation in commercial galleries and museums. The majority of the members of these cooperative are women. And it's quite interesting as I started looking around at that specific question. I would say at least 80% of the membership in cooperative galleries is women artists. Because they can't get into commercial galleries for whatever reason. Well, and I am going to say this today, the commercial galleries are overfull. They can't handle it all. So, because we've created such a vibrant arts scene and arts culture in Denver, there are a lot more artists who are pursuing their life as artists. And, the commercial galleries literally can't handle all of the artists. I know of one that has 200 artists on their list and they can't do it. It's just not possible. So within the 10 or so creative cooperatives, artist cooperatives in Denver, they each have 20 to 30 artists. So that's 300 artists that they're handling through the cooperatives. Let's see, does that answer your question? I can't remember.
Yeah, it does. And this whole, conversation, especially around the gallery scene, feeds into like my bigger question about, launching this Colorado Women's Art Center and Museum. Why now? And why do we need it? If there are spaces for women artists to exist in these cooperative galleries, and they're getting representation there, why does a museum matter for these women?
There's several reasons for this. First and foremost is what happens to the Colorado women artists' artwork and stories and life of making art and processes. What happens to all of that when they die? That is often handled by museums. So the history of the arts is in the museums. So there's that. Because even as of today in the US, throughout the US, there's only about 25% of all artists that are handled by museums and commercial galleries is women artists, and that's throughout the whole US. Colorado is actually a little different. There's one gallery that in particular handles a lot of women, which is great. But still, when I gotta tell you this story because I was like, what is going on here? Maybe a year or two ago, Denver Art Museum had an exhibition, the Phillips collection, and it was, here are all the great artists of the US from the Phillips collection. Of these 78 pieces of artwork in that exhibition, and I literally went around and counted them because I was astounded. 78 pieces of artwork in that collection. There were 5 by women artists, and one artist had 2. So there were literally only 4 women artists represented in that exhibition. And I'm sorry, but we know they have way more women artists in their collection than that. And so it was kind of shocking and also disappointing. And, I know that there's all kinds of reasons why artwork can't be shown or can't be transported or whatever, but I feel very sure that they could have done better than that. So that told me even today that it's either an oversight. I doubt that it's really conscious, but women are not getting the representation and the exposure that they warrant. So in between 2008 and 2020, the Boston Museum of Arts, the Boston Fine Art Museum, made a big display of collecting women's art. And they did really great. They collected over 4,000 pieces of art by women artists. However, in that span of time, they made a lot of collecting, a lot of acquisitions of artists, and that 4,000 pieces of art during that period of time only accounted for 5% of the total acquisitions. So, yes, they collected more women's art than any museum ever had before, and it was still only 5% of the entire acquisitions during that time.